All right, welcome everybody. This is Gavin Mehl. We got a special call today. It's going to be Satoshi and Crypto Rick on with myself. We're going to do a little roundtable discussion, talking all about the Satoshi trial, Copa versus Wright, the goings on in the Bitcoin space, and what everybody's been up to. Both of you guys have been on here before, but never like this. So, how you doing, guys?
I'm all right, mate. It's all good.
Doing well, doing well.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming back on today. And why don't we just go ahead and just do a short, like 2-minute introduction in case people have never heard of you guys before, and just to if it's their first time. So why don't you start out, Rick, with just a short summary on who you are.
So my name is Crypto Rick. I'm a YouTuber that has a YouTube channel called Cryptocurrent. We generalize about every coin. We do focus on BSV and other things like XPR, XCore, and just generally, the new financial system, the esoterics, the decode aspect of it, the symbology, sometimes some technicals, but mainly just the conspiratorial type of stuff, of material. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Satoshi, for those who don't know who you are, buddy, you want to just do a quick background on yourself?
Yeah, I am the defender of Bitcoin. Not gonna have any shit coins getting past me, mate. No way. So I initially started doing this because I realized that nobody knew the difference between money and currency. Currency being a security, money being a commodity. And at the time, I wasn't aware, of CoinGeek or anybody sort of helping Craig out. And I was just like, crikey, there's like nobody in the space educating on the fundamentals of Bitcoin, because they're all like, techies and devs and all that going on about scaling. I'm just like, look, nobody really is talking about what Craig has actually invented. He's actually invented a way to actually commoditize data. And if you want to know what the most valuable money in the world is going to be, well, it's going to be money that is being commoditized out of the world's most useful resource. And the most useful resource is digital data. So in order to commoditize digital data, it means that you actually have the opportunity to own your own data. You have data sovereignty. And when you can turn that data into a coin, which is what he's done through the NFT technology, then we can actually use it as money. And Bitcoin is the digital money that economically sustains the world's first ever commoditized data network, where we all have sovereignty over our data, which, as we all know right now, is massively important. So yeah, that's my intro there.
Nice. Thank you. All right. I love it. Well, great. And it seems like you guys have met before. So I know, Rick, you had mentioned that you knew Satoshi, or you kind of made the suggestion that we get together.
I've never met him personally, but I do watch his YouTube channel, and I think it was very much a very small group of people that were kind of pro BSV at the time. And you had Labs, you had a couple of other few, but I think we're like the core that were basically withstood the FUD of BSV and saw right through the sale.
Where's Crypto Labs these days?
Not sure. I think he's hiding somewhere, but I did try and reach out to him at some stage, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, nice. Well, why don't we start with Rick? We followed up from last time. I mean, because it was such a blockbuster show that you did last time, and you dropped some major information about the court trial that was for entertainment purposes only. Everyone do your own research, I mean, on things, but it was super fascinating. And so you want to just kind of give us a little background on what you've been finding out about this trial and the space, and I'll just give you the floor.
Yep. Okay. So basically, before we were discussing how there's a lot of hidden type esoterics in Bitcoin, the newest things that I found is, as an example, Hal Finney. So Hal Finney isn't actually his real name. You could see that Hal Finney is actually Hal Phoenix, or Hal Finney. It's like the Phoenix without the X. Interestingly, Hal Finney actually died, and you're not going to believe where. He died in Phoenix, Arizona, right? Just to drive home the point that this is all, I guess a pre-scripted thing. His current Twitter followers is 116K followers. So that's 911. And again, we mentioned that 91 has the Phoenix type chronology. And he's got 29 following on his Twitter account, which if you divide the two, you got, 1 plus 1. So that becomes 119 again. Interestingly, right, he pinned his first comment, Bitcoin, running Bitcoin or whatever, or he posted that comment on January 11, 2009. Exactly 15 years later to the dot, the Bitcoin ETF was approved. See, that comes to me as very sus, that from his from his comment running Bitcoin, exactly 15 years later to the T, on January 11, 2024, the Bitcoin ETF was approved. Now, there's some other interesting things, like the symbology of BSV, BTC, and BCH. So I was actually one of the first people to point this out. You see people on Twitter retweeting it, but I actually realized that the symbols were crooked. So as an example, you got BTC leaning forward this way. You got, Bitcoin Cash or whatever leaning this way. And then you got BSV straight up. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Roger Ver did so-and-so, or, this person did so-and-so, but the symbology gave it away, because if you're creating something completely different, you would not have it in that particular way. Like one is crooked, the other one's crooked, but the BSV is the only one that's straight up. So that's what gave it away, that this was done by a hidden hand much greater than these characters. As an example, we're talking about Hal Finney. He was actually cryopreserved in a foundation called Alcor Life Extension Foundation. Alcor is also the name of EOS's exchange, Alcor Exchange. So there's a lot of synchronicities. He died at the age of 58. 5 plus 8 is 13. Interestingly, the symbol of Bitcoin is actually the number 13. If you think about it, you got the B, and the B is basically a 1 and a 3, a 13, right? And then you've got Craig wielding the katana. So a lot of people are like, oh, look at Craig holding this Japanese sword, bit of a meme, just to show that he's got Japanese culture. But that's actually not what he was doing. He was actually doing a ritual. We know that Satoshi Nakamoto in Chaldean is 55. And the 5 of Swords tarot card is the 5 of Swords. So what he was doing was a 5 of Swords ritual, basically a Satoshi ritual with the katana. The other thing is the Tulip Trust. So he called his trust the Tulip Trust after the supposed tulip mania, right? Now, if you actually see the comparisons between Tulip Mania and Bitcoin or BTC, they follow a very kind of similar type of, pump and then, dump, right? And we're going to see that dump very soon. Interestingly, when you look at the Economist magazine, the one that I was referring to previously, the Phoenix wears a crown similar to this, actually. It's got the fleur-de-lis, right? So the fleur-de-lis is actually means, the lily. And the tulip is actually a form of a lily, because what happens is apparently a lily basically blooms at night, and it basically gets resurrected from the dead, or comes out, into the, from darkness to light. So we know that there's a lot of symbology to the Phoenix. Even Craig Wright in an interview specifically makes reference to the Phoenix magazine, specifically to Ash Ketchum, which in Japanese is Satoshi. It's got the Ash Satoshi, and he makes reference to the Firebird in the Pokemon episode. So there's a lot of things here that's actually quite interestingly, a lot of synchronicities in the Bitcoin story, and in my opinion, shows a hidden hand basically through all these things.
Is that the Tokyo roundtable interview that you're talking about? Maybe like 2017 or so? Did he
I'm not
reference
sure
that?
I'm not sure the name, but he definitely made reference to the Phoenix, the Economist, the Phoenix.
Yeah, it's the one it's the Tokyo one for sure. I'll post
Yeah,
it in the link here.
yeah, and like I said, half Phoenix, right? Half Finn, and he died in Phoenix. I'm not making this up. Your viewers can go and check. He died in Phoenix.
It
This is
sounds
all
like
about Phoenix.
he went into cryo, which is like a frozen. Is that the frozen where they freeze your organs? Is that?
Basically, yeah. He went into cryopreservation, but I found that the place that he was frozen was called Alcor Foundation, and there's a exchange called Alcor, which interestingly deals with proton and EOS and that kind of stuff, unrelated to BSV, like unrelated. But
So before I go over to Satoshi, you mentioned how there's going to be a dump in BTC. Is that
hmm,
your prediction?
yeah, I think there's going to be a massive dump. I think it's going to be exactly like Tulip Mania, and I think it's programmed that way. And it's just a matter of time.
What gives you reason to believe that?
A lot of things. So the patents basically will go against them. The miners will start to dump. The halving, we know Tether, is basically keeping it afloat, and vice versa. It's like a cycle. Tether feeds BTC, BTC feeds Tether. Once that loop is broken, um, BTC and Tether will basically come to uh, an unbelievable demise, and that's going to be the black swan of crypto. And basically, everything is just going to be chaos. This will leach into the property market via Evergrande, because Evergrande is also linked to it. And then it's also going to be linked with basically everything else. It's because everything else is interlinked through securitization of debt. So it's all kind of bundled in, and it's just a chaos ready to happen.
All right, Satoshi.
Yes, mate.
Well, what are your thoughts on what Rick's talking about? Are you up to speed on any of this stuff? What's your feedback?
I'm probably coming at this from a different angle, so it's always interesting listening to people like Rick because they have a very different point of view. So it's kind of like and it's stuff I don't really know too much about. So I always sort of like I always take an interest in alternative viewpoints. Um, but me personally, I'm sort of I'm just very practically minded. It's kind of like, look, just give me the cold, hard facts of what's gone on, what's going on. And normally I think it was JP Morgan who said a man always has two reasons for doing something. The reason he tells everybody about, and then the real reason. So I'm always looking for the real reason as to why things are being done, and things are never what they seem. Certainly not in today's world. I often find that you have to read between the lines in a lot of things, and it's almost everything is normally the third option, because when you have choices or things going on, there's either left or right, up or down, black or white, but there's always that third option, that the third angle that you need to just kind of like give a little bit of consideration to figure out what it is, and that's more often than not the correct route to start following, really, because a lot of them, they're like red herrings. So a lot of the people that are trying to deceive you into into thinking certain things, there's all this reverse psychology and all this kind of stuff going on. So really, you've just got to kind of like clear through all the BS, as it were, and then just say, look, where did the resources go? Who benefited from this? What is it they're trying to insinuate by implying that it was somebody else? Who's got away with it? That's the way I generally tend to look at things.
So what's the narrative here, Satoshi, that you're referring to? How is this? How are you seeing this? I mean, he talked about BTC dumping. What is this? What is the narrative?
So the narrative at the moment literally is where is the finger of blame going to be pointing? Whose shoulders are going to burden the responsibility of this massive fraud, the largest fraud in financial history, you know, and people have got billions tied up in this. And this is why, you know, the powers that be want Craig to move a coin, because they know that the moment he moves a coin, that is it. The entire market will tank. And all those, you know, all those who've got billions tied up in BTC, they're just simply going to blame Craig, you know, for tanking the market. That's why they're so desperate for him to move a coin, and that's why he's so stubborn, saying, "No way, Jose. There is no way I'm moving a coin." You know, because this lot have purposely, and I think Craig has actually predicted this. He knew that they were going to corrupt Bitcoin. And Bitcoin could and can be corrupted because it is a commodity, and a commodity cannot have any central point of authority or control, which means it's vulnerable. And that's why it has to be protected externally via patents. And this is why the Crypto Open Patent Alliance are taking him to court, because they want to say that you're not Satoshi Nakamoto, and they're calling him a patent troll. But really, as I've explained, Craig has used his patent portfolio to protect the commoditized protocol that this lot have effectively perverted, for want of a better word, and turned it into an economically worthless security offering. So you know, it's yeah, it's literally, it's a battle of wills at the moment, and a battle of wit yeah, to see where it happens. I mean, I hope Craig doesn't move a coin, just because that could be really, really quite dangerous for him. And that's why, yeah, and yeah, people are saying, oh, you know, you could just prove yourself by moving a coin. No, because if you just move a coin without proving yourself, then the question falls back on, well, did you just steal Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin? You know, where did you get that from? It all comes back to identity. And I hope honestly that Terranode is what blows everything out of the water, because the largest bag holders, the largest concentration of wealth in terms of, you know, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market, is with the Bitcoin miners. So Terranode comes on, makes the, you know, increases the profitability exponentially, you know, and literally they're just like, they switch all their hash rate over, and then they're just like, well, hold on a minute, if we're mining this thing with all of our hash rate on it, it means that we must really want it. Why are we holding BTC? Oh dear, BTC does nothing. Oh shit. And then literally the entire market comes charging in like a herd of wildebeest. It's going to be insane.
Very cool picture right there of it all happening. And then there's so many moving parts to it. The Terranode and the mining, and now that brings up this court case as well. So back to you, Rick. I mean, you mentioned some stuff about the court case earlier. Now, again, this court case is about the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto once and for all. It's Copa versus Wright, and then there's a BTC Core claim on it. So, where do you see? How do you see this court case playing out right now? It's a really hot topic, Kurt.
Yeah.
Rick.
So basically, yeah, I think they may surprise us with Craig possibly initially losing. We know that the Kleiman case, even though it was pretty solid case, end up having to go to appeals and whatnot. So we could expect a kind of similar curveball, and them kind of delaying this out a little bit longer. So perhaps, you know, this could kick on, you know, till 2025. Nobody really knows. There may be, you know, it may be a sudden settlement, which is another thing that is pretty abrupt, is that it's looking to go one way and then out of the blue, they just accept the settlement. I find it very interesting that a settlement was offered very early in the piece. And in my view, that's kind of putting kind of hidden unknown card, is whether they're going to actually activate the settlement card at any point. And then the other option is basically Craig wins outright, but then we could expect probably Copa to then appeal that. Again, similar to the Kleiman case. So I wouldn't be surprised if they then did that. And then during the appeals process, the appeal maybe gets declined and then they accept the settlement. So it's like a double whammy. So I think this case is going to be full of incoming surprises.
And last time, Rick, you made actually a point about how this case you believed, and that it would be it was actually designed to be the regulatory precedent, like the regulatory framework. Can
Correct.
you talk a little bit more about that?
Basically, a lot of people are seeing, this versus that, this versus that. But if you look in the general scheme, is they need legislation to define Bitcoin, as a commodity. They need to define its, patents around it. They can't do that in just any environment. They have to do it in the legislative environment. So they basically put, the hidden hand, as I call it, some people may call it, governmental, super governmental powers. They create these, they're real cases, but they're kind of pre-scripted. So they're real, but they're fake. And they basically put it so that they could eventually get a outcome and then use that outcome as precedent for common law or for financial law or for general law. And then once they have that legislation, they can then use that legislation for the banks to then roll out their system. So the banks are not going to roll out trillions of dollars without some regulatory clarity. So in some ways, this is all a dialectic Hegelian we're seeing. And people like Craig are basically similar, are in the same kind of billionaire club as Jack Dorsey and all these other characters like Zuckerberg. And where people see an illusion of separation, I just see the hidden hand doing its thing. And I kind of confirmed this because the dates of Copa are exactly playing out to the exact T of the halving. Now that's very odd. I mean, this trial could have happened last year. This could have happened many years. We know that they've had plenty of time to do this, but no. They chose the year of the halving, and not just the year of the halving, they chose the outcome to coincide with the exact halving. And that to me is extremely suspicious. And as I said, I think Judge Malaw's in on it. I think Copa's in on it. I think Craig Wright's in on it. I think they're all just doing their role to basically advance the Bitcoin legislation such that London will be the first country perhaps to regulate Bitcoin.
Nice. Thank you. So I'm really very fascinated to hear what you have to say about this court case for Toshi. I haven't really seen enough commentary from you on what's been happening, you being there in the London area. So what, can you take us inside the courtroom from your perspective?
Yeah. So I didn't get to watch all of it, but I would say you can sum up Craig's cross-examination by the speech that he gave saying, I'm just the security guy. When he said, look, you can say, I'm just the security guy that did this. I'm just the security guy that did that. And all these things that he's done for Department of Homeland Security and the New South Wales and the Northern Territory and stuff like that. So I would say that probably sums up Craig. But then, I mean, I initially thought that, well, obviously I was hoping that Craig would win it. I was hoping we were going to hear some, bombshell evidence and all that. But again, it's really crafty how the powers that be have set this court case up in the fact that everything is a cross-examination. So you're never going to hear the things that you want to hear because the cross-examination lawyers, don't want to hear that. They only want to hear what is favorable to their case. And so literally everything they put to Craig was, you forged this, didn't you? You forged that, didn't you? This is a fraud. That's a fraud. You spent your whole life being a forger. Like honestly, it's an absolute joke. But then you had Stephen Lee from Spiral BTC, and I looked into them. So check this out. So Square initially was Jack Dorsey Square that changed their name to Block, and then changed their name from Block almost like as if to say sort of back to Square, and then to Spiral. And so then you've got this guy who's saying that, oh yeah, I'm the lead at Spiral, and then Craig's lawyers obviously literally just ripped into pieces. Oh, you keep saying that it's really important to be independent. So you're a lead, are you? So who funds you? Oh, we're on the board of Block. Oh, you're on the board of Block, are you? Oh, no, we're not anymore. We're actually on the board of Copa. Oh, so you're actually the opposition. So you're not. You know,
I forgot about that. You're right. That was
oh,
their first
dear,
witness,
oh,
and they
dear.
admitted that he was actually Copa.
Yeah. I've called him Stephen. Well, I've Stephen Spiral was square was block is Copa Lee. In the video that I've just put out. Then I think there was Adam back after that who forgot to put in his witness statement that he was the CEO of Blockstream, who is also on Copa. So they're just all right. So again, you're not an independent expert witness then. Yeah, you're just like the opposition. This is getting ridiculous. And then there was obviously Patrick Finnis Madden, who was literally. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I thought the entire trial was predicated upon his independent expert opinion.
The
I
whole
thought that's
case,
what the whole
the Madden is their all-star witness. Yeah, that whole Madden report made the case. That was their case. Yeah, the entire
And
1,000-page Madden report.
Yeah, and so now, now we know he didn't even write the report. I mean, you couldn't make it up. It's like, oh yeah, well, basically, Bird and Bird, who are the solicitors or for the lawyers for the opposing the opposing party's counsel, they wrote my opinion for me, and I signed off on it to say that I agreed with it. I honestly think that they've hung him out. Honestly, because if you look, I looked at his sort of just LinkedIn profile the other day. But the guy's got a bit of experience, but I honestly think they've probably handpicked him, thinking, all right, this guy is credible enough, but not smart enough to not know what's going on and what we're actually doing to him. They've probably approached him and said, look, can you do a report on this? And by the way, we're paying you, and this is what we want you to do. And he's just kind of like gone along with it, not questioning it, because he had no idea what they're up to. No idea that he's literally being led like a lamb to the slaughter, in that trial. Which is why he came out with things like that. Especially when Craig's lawyer said to him, have you ever worked with another client like this before? Producing an independent expert opinion where it's been written for you, and he's just like, no, I've never done this before in my life. So I mean, that was ridiculous. And then there was Zuko Zcash is better than Bitcoin but centralized Wilcox, who can't remember the timeline of events, who said, oh yeah, I didn't receive any Bitcoin in 2009. I didn't download the Bitcoin software in 2009 because I didn't have a Windows computer. Oh, actually, but I did have a Windows computer because I was programming on Python in 2009. And all this stuff that just didn't make sense whatsoever, and then there was like who was the Arthur Rosenthal, who didn't even bother checking whether or not the Bitcoin white paper was written in LaTeX. So basically the question to him was, was this written in LaTeX? Oh, I don't know, I didn't check it, but it could have been. That's how you can sum up his entire witness testimony. And then last of all, we've got Sarah, it was not my intention to mislead Micklejohn. I mean, what a joke that was. Oh yeah, I think they might have spoofed the Wi-Fi and they spoofed the router and they did all this. And then, when Craig's lawyers questioned her on that, they were like saying, look, have you got any idea what it would take to spoof the Wi-Fi, to spoof the router, to spoof the software that they were downloading? Especially when you're considering that you've got two of the top names in the business, Gavin Andresen and Craig Wright. You'd have to fool them. Craig would have to fool him as well. And she was just like, oh yeah, basically it's kind of like, if you're going to do that sort of thing, that's on the level of government espionage, and so saying to her, like, are you seriously suggesting that's what happened? And she was just like, oh no, actually, I was just saying that that's what could happen. And then they were just like, well, if you were saying that's what could happen, what was it doing in your report saying that it did happen? It's just been an absolute farce, and a whole farce. So rather than Craig winning it, I sort of very quickly realized that Copa were going to lose it.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. And one of the points I wanted to just dovetail on there, where did you remember how the point where after Madden gave his testimony, then Wright's team, they didn't even call their witnesses.
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't
Yeah.
that was that telling? I mean, I'm trying to be subjective here and like really, call it. So like if Craig's going to lose, because a couple weeks ago I thought Craig was going to lose this case because we didn't see all the reports and how the experts were going to perform. I was assuming, well, these experts are going to be qualified. They're going to kill it on the stand. I just assumed that. But then what do what about that point when literally Craig's team rested? They didn't call the witnesses. Who are Craig's witnesses anyways on the experts? We never got to see them.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, Copa's supposedly independent expert witnesses have been so poor, literally so poor. I don't know how if the judge doesn't rule in Craig's favor being Satoshi Nakamoto, I don't know what excuse he's going to use because it's just been ridiculous. They've been so, Copa have basically proved they've got nothing. Literally, they've got absolutely nothing. None of Jonathan Hoff's questioning was regard to his identity. It was all, this is a forgery, that's a forgery. You're a fraud. Honestly, they've got nothing. Literally, they've got nothing. The only thing I was thinking, I wish that maybe Craig's lawyers had questioned him and said, managed to extract some more information from him, but then I almost kind of feel like there's no slam dunk evidence, and I think that actually might be a good thing for Craig's personal safety. I certainly think they've done more than enough to win it, just because, like I said, I think Copa have lost it. When they didn't bring Craig's witness forward to be cross-examined, that was actually a pretty smart move, because you're not actually going to hear anything positive from them because they're being cross-examined. So, or any of the good stuff that you really want to hear, they're never going to let out, and they're just going to continue with all the BS that they're doing with Craig. Oh, this is a forgery. They're just basically trying to discredit him. So there's just not a lot of point in hearing somebody trying to be discredited. So yeah, I think it's probably a good move.
Nice. Rick, anything to add here to this?
No, I think Satoshi basically summarized everything. I think this Copa trial is gonna, I guess, have some more surprises, and yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
Nice. All right, cool. So let's where else can we go? I mean, basically we've got the go ahead.
I was gonna suggest the topic that me and Satoshi were actually discussing, which is the price valuation of BSV.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, price valuation. Perfect. Go ahead and I know you guys have kind of speculated on that before. So please, if you want to give your foundation and what the
So one thing Mr. Satoshi and I actually agree upon is actually the true price valuation of BSV. Interestingly, so my price valuation, I'll just put it this way, is infinity. I call it the forever appreciating asset of the world. Again, if we're going back to the esoterics, in The Simpsons, season 31, episode 13. So notice the 13s, like 31 and 13. They actually put the price of Bitcoin as $13 million a coin, right? And even in another episode, the NFT episode, which is the latest one, they put it as 100 million. Now that's the esoterics, but I'll tell you technically why it could reach those values. You've got 21 million coins, and you've got, let's just say, 10 billion people. So it automatically becomes a game of musical chairs, because suddenly you have to divide this currency, if you will, or commodity, which is scarce and actually you can't make more, to a population that's basically growing and spiraling out. So that's just with numbers alone. Factoring in the ETF, right? okay, whatever, the $18 trillion waiting on the sideline to come into BSV if it's not already there. We're looking at, 500,000 to 1 million BSV. Easy. We're talking easy, right? And and what my theory is that BSV will be the Basel III gold requirements for banks. So instead of, so you're going to hold banks, you're going to hold gold to prove that you have the minimal capital reserves. But how do you prove that you hold gold? You tokenize that on the BSV ledger with its unique, bullion number and so on. I looked up the total value of gold in the world, which was, I think from memory, 13 trillion, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And basically, you could actually tokenize the entire gold value on BSV, right? And I think I did something like the math, like if it was roughly, a million a coin or something like that, it basically you could tokenize the gold very nicely in small amounts. So the equivalent would be something like one BSV tokenizes about 300 ounces of gold. Again, these are not supposed to be hard math. I'm just giving you the concept is that you could take a value of BSV, have a corresponding value in gold, plus the tokenization of data. Oh, sorry, not the tokenization, the monetization of data. As I said, the network effect of people using BSV, via the internet, IPv5 or 6. If every day there's data going on the BSV ledger, we're talking about large numbers of data being monetized and using up BSV every single day. Interestingly, people are going to say it's bizarre, but Hal Finney himself, the man himself, the half Phoenix, right, quoted that he believes that each BSV will reach $10 million a coin, right? So, if the guy who actually debugged BSV understood its value and put it 10 million, I can't understand why people are so cringed by that number, because I know people are showing the screenshots of Craig saying, "Oh, I could see it going to 1,200." Well, for legal and financial reasons, Craig is not going to go and tell you, "Hey, guess what? This is a multi-million-dollar asset," So of course he's underplaying it, but the utility that he's talking about, right, versus the price that he's quoting are not concordant, right? So I was actually interested to hear Satoshi's view on his price valuation.
Likewise, Satoshi, you've made some talks about this before, so you want to kind of set the stage and dovetail where Rick's at?
Yeah. So Hal's initial estimate of $10 million per coin was just based on the M1, M2, M3 sort of money stocks. But that's because he didn't really actually understand the utility or what Bitcoin really was. So what I would say is that in the same way that a kilogram is a unit measurement of weight, and a liter is a unit measurement of liquid, I guess. If I was to say to you, I've got a kilogram, your question would be, well, what have you got a kilogram of? It doesn't make sense. I've got a liter. Well, is that a liter of oil? Is that a liter of water? A liter of gasoline? What is it? And so they are unit measurements of value, and fiat currency are unit, they're sort of unit measurements of weight and size. Fiat currency is a unit measurement of value. So when you have a true money that comes along, that money will take on the market capitalization of every single market that is currently measured in fiat currency. Because if you think about it, obviously fiat currency is securities fraud. So in the future, when people sell a house, they'll be selling their house. They won't be selling their house for fiat currency because it's complete fraud and it doesn't have any value whatsoever, and its value continually declines the more they print, and it's economically worthless. So in the future, they will be selling a house like for $200,000 in Bitcoin. because you'll be selling your house, which is worth $200,000, you know, for a medium of exchange, which is $200,000 in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will take on the capitalization of every single financial market that is currently measured in fiat currency. So you just and to give you an idea, when I was initially trying to figure out sort of how big Craig was thinking and what he was going for, obviously talking about price wasn't really appropriate, but I was like, oh, I'll just put this question to him. And so I said to him, I said, is the market that BSV is going for that of global e-commerce that is currently that's currently got a market capitalization of $29 trillion? And his answer was very simple, and he said, no, that's too small. And it was then I realized, yeah, he is going for everything, literally everything. And then I was just like, right, let's get into this. And I was listening to other things that he'd said. And he said, Bitcoin, as in like, a billion transactions per second, it can take on the derivatives market. And the derivatives market is estimated to be between 800 trillion and $1 quadrillion. Just the derivatives market. And the derivatives market is just simply a market of contracts which are based on the performance of an already existing financial product. So in the future, every derivative will be a preloaded smart contract. So the derivatives market, estimated to be around $2 quadrillion. Just to give you a rough example, you divide that by 21 million, but bearing in mind all those people that have lost their Bitcoin in nano ledger wallets and they can't remember the passwords, they've lost their private keys, they've thrown their computers away, the 50, BTC that's in the Genesis block, there aren't 21 million out there. So, so that figure's wrong. But to give you a crude estimate, $1 quadrillion divided by 21 million, gives you about $50 million per coin at a conservative estimate.
Toshi, you may not be aware of this. It seems like, well, I'm good friends with a guy called Xiaowei Lu of Scrypt, and he's the one that wrote the programming language on Bitcoin. Have you heard of him, Scrypt?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They've got a client that plugged in, and his name is Richard, and the company's actually called Tokenovate. They've actually already, I think it's over a year and a half in development on the derivatives market on Bitcoin.
Wow.
And this is a guy who's actually comes from the derivative industry. He was the CEO of Enchain at one point, and then also he was working in the derivative industry. That was his expertise, and it's a real serious company.
Wow.
So that may, your theory of derivatives on chain, or I don't know, it may not be as far off. I mean, I was thinking, maybe 100 years from now. No, this is much further along than we realize.
Oh yeah, well, I would also say that when people are saying to me, look, how fast do you think this is going to take off? Well, look at how fast the mobile phone market took off. But the mobile phone market took off because it was useful. Imagine now you've got something that is not only useful but valuable. So let's say you're one of these tech companies, and again, the only obligations that a corporation has is to their shareholders, and shareholders want profits, and profits can either be made by increasing sales or cutting overheads, reducing costs and increasing data efficiencies. So now you've got all these corporations that can do away with all their really costly private server networks that are susceptible to cybersecurity hacks and virus software. And now you can literally just put everything on the Bitcoin network, where data cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, where storage is indefinite. You pay one fee to upload it. So you're buying Bitcoin in order to save yourself millions, if not billions of dollars. And at the same time, it's scarce in supply, and therefore it's an asset increasing in value. I mean, my God, I would say just imagine the mobile phone market times 100 and then on steroids. That's kind of what we're looking at.
Wow. Well,
in my humble opinion.
Yeah, not for entertainment purposes only. Not none of this is financial or legal advice. Rick, go ahead and talk to me. Where do you think this is going?
To be honest, $100 million a coin, and I'll be the first person on record to say that. Because I just can't see this behemoth stop. I really can't. I can't see a number where it just stops because, like Satoshi said, just the financial derivative market alone will send it to multi-millions. And the other thing we didn't even discuss is IPv6 and IBM partnership. Where's that going? Recently a colleague of mine told me something about the digital twin project and IBM, and basically how they want to put everything physical but a digital copy twin on the BSV ledger. So as an example, you got your car, you got the ownership on as an NFT as a digital twin on the BSV ledger. So not just financial stuff, but objects. Everything basically has to eventually get tokenized. And if we're correct, and I've always said this, that BSV is the base layer of the world, and it factors in, every time you log on to an internet, you're going to do so with your digital ID linked to your IP address. And they're going to say, well, this is for security because now we know who's posting. Of course, this is going to bring authoritarian controls, because basically at all times, in theory, people will know, well, not people, but the governments will know, okay, Rick logged in from his IP address. He logged in at this time, at this date. He went to this website and he commented this. And they may, in the future, governments may use that against us, right? But the concept of the valuation is that, well, if everyone is logging in, multiple websites, right, and multiple informations, right, you're talking about, zero of data a day, right, compounded, daily, basically compounded daily, because more users, more network, etc. And we haven't even discussed CBDCs, guys. CBDCs is another beast, and we already know Philippines and is already working with Enchain and that kind of stuff to possibly consider the Philippine CBDC running on BSV Ledger. My view is all currencies will ultimately run on BSV, whether directly or indirectly, because we know that Craig said that he's going to even have Ethereum as a sidechain off BSV. We know the internet will be a sidechain off BSV. So even if let's say you run the USDC on Stellar, that's going to be built up on BSV. So the use case, and that's why I think the most accurate valuation for BSV is infinity. That's the only accurate price valuation you're ever going to hear, because this asset will go up and never stop. And the only reason it will stop is if human civilization itself stops. If we, get extinct, that's when BSV will plateau in price. But as long as people are using it, and as long as human beings are still alive and the system's still there, BSV will just keep appreciating. And again, if you're into predictive programming and in the media, again, the Simpsons actually have the Bitcoin episode, and in the bottom hand they have the infinity symbol, basically hinting that it's going to have infinity value, and it needs to have a high price to tokenize, gold and oil and all these other commodities we're not even talking about. But back to what I was saying about the Basel III capital requirements is that my gut feeling is that every bank is going to have a minimum BSV reserve. In other words, hey, you want to lend out money, you got to prove that you've got some minimal reserves. What's that proof of reserve? It's going to be BSV, because BSV is a commodity. It's going to be like digital gold, but even more expensive. But the comparison is you need something tangible, but it's not going to be gold bullion bars, because again, I could have 1 ton of gold in my basement. You don't know that, right? So how do I prove to a licensing body for the Basel III requirements that, hey, I'm actually Basel III compliant? You got to tokenize that gold and basically show them that you've got this gold as BSV. So I think that's the whole point of this, is like, how do we define a commodity? Is it something, tangible? Is it something I could hold? Is it something like gold? Or can you have a concept of a digital commodity or something that's digitally valuable, and through court of law, basically, they may say, hey, Bitcoin, we classify Bitcoin as a commodity, and that can be our Basel III requirements. And I think if banks are going to lend in the future, they're going to have to hold BSV. That's my theory. So then
Yeah,
that adds
seems
buy
like we've
pressure.
had the problem with Fort Knox, and we always were told there was a lot of gold in there here in the U.S., but we really never knew how much gold there was. And seems like what your theory is that this could potentially solve the problem of auditing the reserve, auditing the banks, where they actually have a public ledger. This seems like a really good position to kind of transfer over to you, Satoshi, and let you build the stage on your theory or your concept of Bitcoin being the first digital commodity, and make the case for that, with the Howey test and whatnot. It's a really interesting points that you have. I would love to hear it.
Yeah. Actually, this is the most critical point that I'm desperately trying to get people to understand. I cannot stress how important this is, and I wish sort of CoinGeek and other people would actually try to explain this more, because this is what fundamentally what Bitcoin is. In order to give something economic value, it has to go through the process of commoditization, which is effectively sort of the process of standardization. So, I can't sell an infinite amount of water or oil or coffee or, a huge amount of gold. It has to be standardized. So you would barrel oil, you would bottle water, you would bag coffee and weigh it out. You would weigh gold, you would standardize it. And once you have a standard, that standard can then be measured against the cost of other goods and services in the economy, and then used as a medium of exchange. So what you need to do is you need to be able to commoditize data. Now, one of the things that a commodity is, it's either only ever extracted or grown, because there are no human barrier to entry. And if you're going to use something as a money, as a medium of exchange, it can't be something that's grown, because otherwise people would just simply grow as much money as they could, and it would very, very quickly end up at zero. So therefore, it needs to be fixed in supply. And if it's fixed in supply, it has to be extracted. And if it's extracted, then the distribution of it has to somehow be already out there in a neutral, organic way. So just in the same way that gold and silver and other precious metals, they don't grow, they're already distributed, naturally, for want of a better word. How do you get Bitcoin out there naturally? Well, first of all, you have to add commonality to the starting point. This is the main thing that Craig has solved. He has solved the paradox of the centralized starting point, because if someone can start something, it means that someone else can start the same thing anywhere at any time, meaning there's an infinite supply and therefore an economic fundamental value of zero. So how do you solve that paradox? Well, you have to give everybody an equal, or a reasonable, equal and common opportunity to start the network themselves, which is why Craig released the white paper on the 31st of October 2008. And then a reasonable time in law is considered 2 months. And just to ensure that nobody could dispute that a reasonable time had been provided, he actually left it 2 months and 4 days. So releasing the white paper on the 31st of October, again, Halloween, an added distraction. So, calling Craig Pumpkin Man is probably quite apt. And then he started the network on the 3rd of January 2009. And that started the period of speculation, because it was neutral organic growth. And that is what cannot be replicated by any other, commoditized network, because even though anyone can make a digital commodity, what they can't replicate is the neutral size and growth. And so the reason he chose 10 years is because if you're down a casino playing red or black, there's a 0.1% chance that you will throw 10 reds in a row, meaning there's a 99.9% chance that you won't throw 10 reds in a row. So if you can let your network grow without any central point of influence for a period of 10 years, that means there's a 99.9% chance that no other network will achieve that level of neutral size and growth. And that is what differentiates Bitcoin from every other, well, economically worthless securitized shitcoin. And so, and what gives it its usefulness? Well, we want to say if something is useful, it's valuable. If something is useless, it's worthless. Bitcoin as a token gets its value from the utility of its network, because you can only access its network by buying Bitcoin, because it's only with Bitcoin that you can actually upload your digital information or requirements onto the network, because a network is only ever either centrally controlled or economically competitive. And in order to be economically competitive, there has to be an asset that the network produces that people use to upload their data onto the network with. And that is what Bitcoin is.
Can you take us through, in summary of your point there, take us through your article here that you wrote on the digital commodity?
Yeah. So the Howey test was derived from a very famous case, which was the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, versus W.J. Howey Co. 1946. And they came up with a test to determine what created a security. And they said that if a security is being offered, first of all, there has to be an investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit derived from the efforts of others. Now, it's kind of long-winded, because really a security is just simply certified secured entitlement. Does that certification or that token, does whatever this thing that person is selling entitle you to anything? If it doesn't entitle you to anything, then it is blatant securities fraud, because they're just spinning you a yarn. So then I was just like, okay, right. So we've got a test now for a security. How can we test for a commodity? So, first of all, as I've said here, is there a common starting point? Has a reasonable amount of time, an opportunity been provided for anyone and everyone to start the network themselves? If not, it's a security offering. Two, has there been common, which is neutral organic growth without any central point of influence, of the network? Three, is there economic competition resulting in a common entry and exit to the market, for people to compete in? Because without competition, you simply get collusion and centralization. So economic competition is absolutely essential. So all these other shitcoins that are, pre-mined, like Stellar and XRP, or they're proof of stake, they're all economically worthless security offerings, because, like I said, without competition, you get collusion and centralization. Fourth one, there has to be common accountability. So in other words, accountability and responsibility has to move or shift from those who economically sustain the network to those who use the network. And that can only be done through a chain of digital signatures that makes the users of the network equally accountable to one another, rather than a centralized third party. So this is why the powers that be have constantly attacked the chain of signatures. Like, SegWit was an attack on the chain of signatures, Schnorr signatures, or, scrambling signatures. It's literally, whenever these people try to anonymize a network, they always try to attack the chain of signatures, because sending Bitcoin is like sending a contract of value. And in the same way that a contract is invalid or illegitimate if it doesn't have a signature on it, it's the same thing with a transfer of Bitcoin. If your signature is not on that transfer of Bitcoin, you cannot prove who you've sent it to or who's received it, which means it's absolutely economically worthless and contractually illegitimate. So yeah, that's what they've done with that one. And then five, well, the last ones are just to do with the dynamics of the network. Obviously, the protocol has to be locked so that no one can change it, no one controls it. There has to be unbounded scale so that limitations and restrictions can't be manufactured, and therefore the network not be manipulated. And then last of all, you just need a fixed supply of the asset that it produces so that it can't be inflated or deflated. That is it.
So common starting point, economic growth, economic competition, common accountability, lock protocol, unbounded scale, fixed supply.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that need to be asked in order to make that determination. So of a digital commodity. Well, okay, we've got about a little over 2.5 minutes left. So why don't we go on over to you, Rick, for 1 minute in closing on, let me stop sharing my screen here before we wrap up. Any, floor's yours for 1 minute.
I just wanted to say, that people should consider, getting into BSV. And I think BSV will basically be the base layer of the world. I think it's going to be a forever appreciating asset. I think its value will be infinity, and I think it's got unlimited use case, and will be the Basel III minimal capital requirements for banks.
Fascinating. Satoshi, what do floor is yours.
Oh yeah,
Give us
okay,
some
yeah.
words
I'll
of
kind
wisdom to close here with. I mean, on the last minute.
Yeah. So I just remembered I was trying to think of a definition of what Bitcoin was, and so I came up with this, and Craig agreed with me. I said, Bitcoin is the foundation layer of all future digital technologies, secured and underpinned by economic principles. And it is literally the most valuable commodity on earth because it is the most useful commodity on earth. It is an extension of our own personal freedoms and liberties. It is huge.
An extension of our own personal freedoms and liberty. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful way to close there, Satoshi. So Rick, where can people find you?
Cryptocurrent YouTube, or on Twitter, cryptocurrent77. Yeah.
Satoshi.
Well, if somebody is lucky enough to follow me, because I have got a very trigger happy block finger on my Twitter profile, because there are so many trolls out there. Literally everybody who follows me, I look at, I do a little bit of research on their profile, and then decide if they get blocked or not. So yeah, my entire philosophy on this is quantity over quality over quantity. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, that's it, gentlemen. This is really valuable. I'm going to get this out there. We'll publish it as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe button. Follow these gentlemen. We'll see everybody at the top. Thank you, guys.
Hey, that
Thanks.
was awesome. That was